Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Brownie Points podcast. It's a sad day for all of us. The Browns fell to the Steelers, unfortunately. Today's topics, we're going to get into Deshaun Watson. Is it time to worry? Is it time to panic? We'll discuss it. We're going to get into Nick Chubb's injury, who's going to replace him, Jerome Ford. There's also those rumors going on with Kareem Hunt. So we'll see who's going to replace him. How do we think they're going to do as his replacement? Then we'll get into the defense of Jim Schwartz, talk about the impact that he's had, as well as the standout players. And then we're going to get into our Brownie Points segment, where we give out Brownie Points to the top performers on offense and the top performers on defense. And we're going to have a little bit of a segment where we look ahead to the game against the Titans. And hopefully it'll bring some more positivity and light into your life after that disastrous Monday night. All right, so let's get in first about Deshaun Watson, because that was a disappointment and it needs to be talked about. What's going through your mind after that game?
So that's what's interesting, is I was never as excited as a lot of people were about him. So when they got him, I always thought he was good, but I always thought he was also a touch overrated. I never really thought he was elite. I always thought he was good. I thought he was very good with the Texans, but not elite. So I always had a little more tempered expectations. I didn't expect him to be good right away. And I was always saying by about week 5 into this season is about when to worry. But I thought by now he would look competent. And what's scaring me is he's not looking competent. It's not that I expect him to be Deshaun, making big plays and coming up in the clutch. I thought he might look competent. He still has a good receiving core. He got plenty of help out of the backfield. They ran for over 160 yards without his rushing yards. I'm talking about Ford and Chubb. He got plenty of help. They, as an offense, the Steelers' offense scored 12 points. Yeah. If they just control the ball and do things just well, not crazy, just well, take control, move the ball, score some points, 1 or 2 touchdowns, we win. I don't think that's asking too much. I expected competency with a flash or two by now. And the fact that we haven't seen that is very concerning. So it is getting worrisome, because at some point I need to see him process better. When he's making throws, he is waiting till guys are wide open. In the NFL, you can't wait till people are wide open. You have to make plays before. That's how it goes. Sometimes they'll be open, but he looks afraid. When he's moving in the pocket, he isn't distancing himself and then looking downfield. He's running like a running back, trying to get around blocks and keeping his head down right away. He doesn't look downfield. Again, he'll finally see somebody and he'll throw it, and it's too late. By then, the corner's gotten there. You can't wait till people are open. You can't wait till they're almost open. And you can't see it even in advance. It needs to be on time in advance. It is well in advance. That's the tricky part about playing quarterback. You have to make it. When you see the play developing, you have to make that play. When you see the corner being flat-footed and the right route and the way it played out and the coverage, that's when you have to make the decision. He's making them very late. I expected a little better, some improvement from last year, and I'm not seeing it. And so, yes, I am starting to get worried. I'm not hitting the full-blown panic button just yet, but we're going to have to see some turnaround and some serious improvement soon.
Yes, 100%. And for me, yes, it's not time to panic. But I'm very worried, and honestly, I'm working hard to keep off that panic, because here's the thing. The Browns can't survive with Deshaun Watson like this. We gave up $45 million a year guaranteed for the next 4 years. We are locked into this situation. Additionally, we had to give up draft assets, draft capital in order to get him, which means it's going to be harder to find a replacement. It's not like we drafted a quarterback number 1 overall in the draft, and then if they stink, okay, they stink. Maybe you give them an extra year, but regardless, you can move on from their cap without it being too much of a hit, and you can draft another guy in the next year. We can't move on from his cap. We're not going to be able to trade that. It's fully guaranteed. No one's going to want him if he plays like this. So we're going to be stuck with him, and it's going to be much harder to replace him without having high-level draft picks. So he needs to get his act together. Additionally, why I'm basically right on the edge of panicking is because he's had time. He had 6 games where there was no pressure, no one was on him about anything, and all we said was, Deshaun, go out there and get comfy. Get cozy again. Get comfortable with being in the crowd, being in the audience, being in the huddle, all those little things, those intangibles, so to speak, about being in an NFL game, being in the NFL environment that you can't replicate throwing around, with the ball buddies with your friends. That's what he had those 6 games for, and that's all he had to do. That's all he had to do. He had no expectations. So he had all of that just to get comfy, and then an entire offseason to learn the offense, get buddy-buddy with his receivers, get buddy-buddy with the coaches, watch film, and get his brain right. And this is what he comes out with. And it's not good enough. Because the Browns are not in a situation where they can recover from a $45 million quarterback playing like a backup. He needs to play up to his potential. He needs to play up to his contract because the Browns can't handle him not. So if he doesn't get his stuff on board, the Browns are screwed 100% for the next 4 to 5 years, and we're going to have a little bit of a Brooklyn Nets situation.
We're not the Niners. Not everyone can pull a Brock Purdy.
Exactly. Certainly not the Browns.
And $45 million a year backup does not sound enticing.
No. Because he's played, to be completely frank, he's
played worse than Brissett.
He's played worse than Brissett. He hasn't even played really like a $20 million quarterback this past game. He played like a $10 million quarterback. He played like that backup that you throw in there. He's kind of athletic, and you hope he'll do something. He had all those traits where he's holding on the ball too long, running around the pocket. It was a mess.
You know what's terrifying?
What?
He has very scarily similar statistics over his last 8 games to the last 8 games of Baker, when Baker was injured with the humerus bone.
I didn't look into that,
labrum.
but doesn't shock me.
But that's scary because he had that's the labrum, the messed up ankle. Both tackles were out. You know, the receivers were super injured. As we know, Landry was extremely injured, still hasn't recovered. All that. And they have almost this, it's like scarily similar stats.
Wow.
That is not what I was hoping for.
No.
Yeah, no, it's, and he looks athletic, but even then,
we didn't think that was going to go away.
But his mindfulness of his athleticism isn't there. The way other people who are athletic use it to their advantage, he isn't doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's instinctual. It's not mindful. You know what I'm saying? Like he's not even maximizing his athleticism anymore. And that, it just kind of feels like he looks like a rookie right now. Like
that's what I was saying. He looks like that backup that you just kind of throw in there, and you're like, oh gosh.
He just looks like a rookie, doesn't he? Like he has some talent, but he's begging the game to slow down.
Yeah. And
the game is not going to slow down for you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get as much time as a rookie does. I mean, he looks kind of like Bryce Young out there.
Yeah. And his best plays, the best plays from this past game were 50-50 balls that he tossed up to Amari Cooper. It wasn't exactly mind-blowing throws. I mean, it's a good throw. Like a franchise quarterback has to be able to make those back shoulder 50-50 ball throws. And he did do those, but it's not like, Patrick Mahomes. But he's getting paid like Patrick Mahomes. So he really needs to be there. And we have to hold him to that standard. We can't just hold him to a bridge-level quarterback standard. That's what I'm trying to say, is that,
I wish he was
bridge quarterback's not going to do it. He's got to be better than that. Even though that's what I'm saying. He hasn't been bridge-level quarterback. But even if he was, that wouldn't be good enough. He needs to be better. He needs to be $45 million a year quarterback. That's what we need from him.
But I might not be freaking out if he was playing at a bridge-level quarterback at this point. Because it wouldn't be good enough. But at this point...
He'd be on the right track.
If it would be like, okay, he's playing bridge-level with a couple flashes. Be like, okay, I'll wait a couple more games. Not going to worry too much. He's still coming along.
Yeah.
The fact that he's not there yet is what's really worrying in terms of, is he developing? Is he getting better? Is he getting back to form? Doesn't feel like he is.
No.
And it makes you wonder, like, was Hopkins playing a very big role in that and just grabbing 50-50 balls because he was a giant and just catching everything anywhere nearby? I mean, maybe you're overthinking it because, the game can pass you by.
Mm-hmm.
But it immediately comes to mind.
Yeah.
And the scary thing is, I mean, you worried about the playoffs, and then it's like, wait, we can't even get to that level. But we're still worried about the playoffs because he never proved that he could perform in the playoffs or in bad weather.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of angles to worry about with him, and yet we still can't seem to hit base level right now.
Yeah.
And with the guaranteed money, it's very scary. It feels like we're the Cardinals almost right now.
Yeah.
I think the Murray situation.
If he doesn't improve, if he doesn't look better, if he doesn't look at least bridge level against the Titans, it's time for early onset panic. I guess we'll get into that next week if we get into there, but this has been a lot.
Especially because the Titans are injured in their secondary.
Yes.
That is one of the worst secondaries in the NFL right now due to injuries.
Yeah. All right. We're going to move off of that happy subject and move on to another happy subject. Nick Chubb, out for the year. We talked at the beginning of the season about the running back room, and one of the things that you said was you were worried about the depth of this team because you said Nick Chubb gets injured every year. He's going to be out for a few games. Turns out it was the whole season. So that's unfortunate. Not as bad as the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, I suppose, because we at least got him for a game and a half, or a game and a quarter, whatever, but not good. So Jerome Ford took his place. How did he do?
He did real well last night. I thought he did real well. He had one really big explosive run. And look, it's not fair to hold him to Chubb standard. I don't expect him to play that well. But honestly, he played better than Hunt did when Chubb was out. He had a big explosive run for 69 yards, and he went for over 100 yards. And don't forget, it did take a quarter and a half for him to come in. And he still ran for 100 yards. He put up a 69-yard run and put up a couple 4 or 5-yard runs. I thought he had some nice moves. He had that one really nice run where he was caught behind the line of scrimmage and he didn't give up and he got like 9 yards out of it. And that was really nice to see. It looked a lot better than the preseason, which is good. He looked a lot better than that first snap where he fumbled it last week against the Bengals. He actually looked pretty good, so that feels good. It does feel like they're probably going to have to get somebody else to complement.
Do you think they're going to end up picking up Kareem Hunt? Because I saw on Twitter earlier today that Kareem Hunt visited the Browns. Are they going to pick him up?
Yes, it's a great point. I think they will. I don't think it's the best move, but I think they will. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm skeptical because, he had great moments for us as the Browns, when he was with the Browns and, in his time with Nick Chubb, and he was great. But there's a reason why other teams didn't pick him up. There's a reason why he's available for us to scoop him up 2 games into the season.
Yeah, and
elite running backs, guys who everyone in the NFL respects and wants on their team, are not there when the season starts. Yeah, that's just not how that works. There's a reason why he's out there. He's not what he used to be.
Yeah, and he has name recognition, so it's not like people don't know who he is.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not like he's some USFL guy just flying under the radar who's super talented. It's possible he could bring something to us. We also don't know what the Browns' intentions are with him, so it's possible that they just want him for depth. That maybe they put him third behind Pierre Strong even, or maybe they're just going to have him second behind Jerome Ford. We don't know if they're planning to insert him into the starting lineup necessarily. But let's assume that they signed Kareem Hunt.
Yeah.
Where would he be on the depth chart for you? What do you think?
I think he should still be 2. Unless Ford starts messing up, if he's playing like he did last night or close to it, he should still be the 1. Mm-hmm. But it might be a slightly more even one than a Chubb as the 1.
Yeah.
Meaning, let's say you're doing 30 carries for the running back room. Instead of it 25-5, it might be more 20-10. But I do think that Ford should get his opportunity. I think he's played well. And I think, I got to say, one thing Stefanski needs to do better at is giving people their opportunity. I think it's why Ernest isn't here anymore. When he earned his opportunity and had chances at it, he never got them. When Kareem would be injured, he didn't get those secondary carries, even though he had shown what he could do.
Yeah.
So I do think he needs to be better with that. And when someone's playing well, let them keep playing for you. So I think Ford's earned it with the way he played against the Steelers. And again, if we had competent quarterback play, it would have been a big key part of us winning that game. So, yeah, I gotta say that he should still be the 1. I think Kareem Hunt's very likely, just due to also familiarity and
very likely to be what? To be number 2 or to be number 1?
Oh, to be signed. Be the one to be
signed. Yeah. I agree they should be signed, and I do agree with you as well that he should be the number 2. The Browns, as an organization, not even from my opinion, we know that they believe in Jerome Ford because they let go Demetric Felton, they let go Josh Kelly, they let go the guys in preseason, before the season started, and put him in that position to be the number 2. So obviously they show that they believe in him somewhat. So with Nick Chubb going out, you have to think that he's going to be the starter. Even if they do bring in Kareem Hunt, I think Kareem's going to slot into that number 2. It'll be nice to have somebody like him because he, you can still throw him into receiving packages and things like that, stuff that you should want to do with Demetric Felton. Maybe Kareem Hunt can still do those kinds of things, but I think that's where he's going to slot in for sure. Okay, so I think we've had enough sadness. I think we need to bring a little bit of light into our lives. Let's get into the defense, because that was actually a genuine strong point, a beacon of light for the Browns. Gave us some hope. It was the only reason we were even really in that game, pretty much, was the defense. Jim Schwartz has been incredibly impressive, not just in the fact that he turned around this team in the way that he has with their defense, but he's actually getting the most out of our star players by putting them in positions where they can be successful. Denzel Ward's a great man-to-man corner. Greg Newsome's a good man-to-man corner. We have the talent for you to load the box, which they've been doing, bringing in the safeties a little bit more plays, just packing in that line and letting the corners do their job, which they have. They've locked down the receivers and allowed the defensive line to have a bigger impact. And that scheme that Jim Schwartz has brought to the team has been effective.
Yeah, he's definitely been impressive. One thing I do want to note is he has been rather aggressive. So I also want to see his...
That has worked.
It's worked so far. My question is, how will he adjust when it doesn't? Meaning, at some point, it won't work. There'll be a game where it doesn't.
Yes.
And there'll just be some quarterbacks who can just beat you. And so you have to keep it in a little more. I'm curious to see if he can make the adaptation. Like, in other words, his defense overall is good, but I just want to see if he can do it. Like, that could happen against the Bengals. Now, this past game, there was bad weather. Joe Burrow's still recovering from an injury. Mm-hmm. But most years, you got Higgins and Chase, and as good corners as you have, they're going to beat you someplace.
Yeah.
And Burrow can throw it downfield, and they can light you up. So you got to worry about that a little bit. So we'll see when we get to those few matchups what he does and see if he adjusts. I'm not attacking it yet because we don't know what his game plan. He may change the game plan.
Yeah.
So, but so far it's been great. And yeah, the discipline of the players to be in the right position and have gap discipline. And everybody is doing their job.
Yes.
And they're keeping contained and not giving up third and longs by leaving wide open gaps for the quarterback. There was almost a moment.
No third and long scrambles.
And number 54 comes right along and makes sure to get the contain and keeps picking in the pocket, and it's over.
Exactly.
We have to do that. It's something we haven't done for years. The only frustrating thing is it always appears that either the offense or the defense is good, but they're never good at the same time. I mean, last year, the defense was great down the stretch, but they were bad when Brissett was quarterback.
Yeah.
And it just feels...
That's how it generally feels in the NFL. It feels like that a lot. It's hard to get them both going at the same time.
I do think there's an extent to where when you're scoring a lot and moving fast that it can allow your defense to get tired. And so sometimes I think that plays into it to an extent, for sure. For sure, I think it does play into an extent. But yeah, it always feels like that. It always does feel that... I don't know if it's that the defensive mindset comes sharper when it's closer and it's low scoring, but it does often feel like that. Definitely been true of the Browns.
Yeah, that's for sure. But I agree with your point about Jim Schwartz and where they are, because that was my thought too when I was watching that Steelers game. I was thinking, wow, this is really great. This is working. And then I also thought right after that this is what we did last week. So we did that last week. It worked in part because we have good corners, also in part because of the rain. It worked this week. They were missing Deontay Johnson. Kenny Pickett isn't exactly Patrick Mahomes. So they haven't really been tested. His defensive scheme hasn't really been tested yet. So like you said, I'm very excited. I'm very happy with how it's been going. But I do want to see what happens when they face a team with great corners that are there and able to help without the weather hindering them. So a team like the Bengals, when eventually they play them again, I would like to see how he potentially adjusts.
Yeah, and side note, Kenny Pickett, after all that hype in the offseason for
no reason.
Whatever reason, just I guess he's a Steelers quarterback, so that's why. And wow, he's just as bad as last year.
Yeah.
That guy makes Brandon Weeden look like a superstar.
Kenny Pickett's awful.
He's so bad. He was never good. Like, he was never like, oh, they won a couple games last year. Okay, he had a great defense. Like that's like saying Zach Wilson played well. Yeah. And they won some games, which they did because they had a great defense.
So I'm telling you, because rookies aren't judged by their average. They're judged by their peaks.
Yeah. But so when they had those peaks, they just won games.
No, I know, but they had some peaks. They had to get a couple moments, not where he was like so great, but where things worked. Like it worked. They got the win. It worked. He did enough. And people are like, oh, next year he'll take another step. Like there's this assumption that also happens a lot, by the way, with rookies, as you know. There's always an assumption that they're going to take another step. But A, that doesn't always happen. And B, sometimes they even take a step back.
Yeah, guys get better tape on them and figure out what's going on.
Exactly.
But
Gardner Minshew's best season might have been his rookie season.
But Pickett, they did overestimate a bit, though. Like, even in his rookie year, they kind of, like, in the offseason, like, they kind of just forgot what they wanted to and then started reimagining things based on his wins.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, he's bad. He's real bad.
Yeah.
I'm glad. And Fields both are going to be moving along soon from the ranks of the starters, in my opinion. But, yeah, I don't hate that Pickett is terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
It's nice to see.
There's only so much that we can really handle. I mean, we couldn't even handle him.
It'd be better if we could take advantage of it. But
yeah, exactly.
Well, to be fair, he only had 12 points.
It wasn't him.
We could handle him.
Yeah. Kenny Pickett was not the problem.
Yeah.
That was not the problem. So, yes, that's true.
And I will say, George Pickens did have that huge play.
Yeah.
I think defense overall played well, but that's what I'm worried about with the better quarterback, that they might take a couple more of those plays.
Yeah, because obviously, you bring in the guys to the line of scrimmage.
So we'll see.
That second and third level is going to be a little bit more open.
But to be fair, again, he may very well have done this knowing, hey, it's Kenny Pickett. At worst, it'll be one or two plays.
Yeah, we don't know why
so
exactly.
That's not fair.
He could be thinking this exactly.
Yeah, and because look, the Titans, they just dropped, was it 30 points or so?
Mm-hmm.
On the Chargers? with Tannehill. I mean,
I'm not sure. I didn't check this.
It's not what he used to be, but he dropped a lot of points on him. And Tannehill he's still got some juice in him. He's not crazy, but he's got some juice. If you make some stupid plays, he'll make you pay for it. So
yeah,
they're not a dead offense just yet. So
No.
let's be careful with this a little bit still.
No, absolutely not.
Better than Pickett.
Yeah, better than Pickett for sure. All right, moving into the Brownie Points segment. I just want to give you all a reminder. The Brownie Points segment is where we give 3, 2, and 1 Brownie Points to offense, then 3, 2, and 1 Brownie Points to players on the defense. So that's 6 players in total getting Brownie Points, 3 for the offense, 3 for the defense. Let's get right into the offense, and then we'll move into the defense so we can end this on a more positive light. So getting into the offense, sorry, I'm going to let you go in a second. For 3 Brownie Points for the offense, for me personally, watching that game, trying not to throw up, I'm not giving anybody 3 Brownie Points. Nobody deserves it, in my eyes. I want to hear what you have to say. But in my eyes, no one deserves 3 Brownie Points, and I'm not going to give it out just because it's in our segment. No one deserved it.
I think it's fair, but personally, I think Jacoby Ford deserves it because
Jerome Ford.
Jerome Ford.
Yeah.
Jacoby Ford. I keep thinking Jacoby Ford.
I don't know why.
Jerome Ford, Ford tough, mini truck. Look, I mean, I thought he did really well in a limited amount of time. He came in a limited amount of time, and in his big moment, he played well. He had a huge carry that got us into the end zone. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of touchdowns, so that was kind of critical.
Yeah.
And he got over 100 yards in, 2.5 quarters?
Mm-hmm.
I thought he did very well in limited time. I thought he did really about everything he could in a sudden moment where you're suddenly asked to step into the shoes of Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
It's intimidating. And it's against a pretty good defense in the Steelers. And he really did show up and make some big moves. And I thought he had some really nice runs where it really was the running back making a play and not just some big holes open up for you. Yeah. So I liked his vision. I like what he did. And considering his a little out of nowhere and in a big moment on Monday Night Football, I am going to give him 3 stars. I think he really stepped up.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about Jerome Ford. And I do agree with you that he was definitely the standout player. It just didn't quite feel like 3 points for me. I think that, he had 2 great plays to me. He had that amazing, really long, I'm getting myself all fumbled up. He had that amazing run that got him all the way to the goal line, and then he had that great play that looked like it was going to be a 10-yard loss, and then somehow it turned into a positive 9-yard gain, I think it was. That was incredible. For me, it wasn't quite enough for me to want to give him 3. For me, it felt like a 2 Brownie Point performance, so that's where I had him. Who do you have at 2 Brownie Points? Who are you giving your 2 Brownie Points to?
This is a little trickier because, again, we get real thin. Once we get Jacoby Ford showed up. Jerome Ford showed up. And, I mean, you think about Chubb, but it just feels weird. He just didn't have enough time, I guess. You're tempted to give it to him. Thinking about I kind of want to give Hopkins some love for hitting a 55-yarder, but he also missed the field goal. So I think he just escapes away with not getting a lot of blame. So I'm not going to give anyone 2.
I think they offset.
Points. Yeah, I'm not going to give anyone 2 Brownie Points. This is where I have my hole. So I give 3 to Ford because I think he did well enough, but I don't see anyone at 2.
All right, so obviously we have a fairly similar line of thinking. There weren't too many standouts, so I had my hole at 3. You had your hole at 2. For me, 1 point. Still not too much out there, but I'm going to just throw a bone to Amari Cooper. He did have a couple of those great 50-50 ball catches that got us out of tough third and long situations. So I feel like he needs a little bit of a shout out for that. So for me, 1 point is Amari Cooper, but there isn't really that much to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. I like Amari Cooper. It's really hard to judge these receivers. I don't hold anything against really any of them at this point. It's just not really fair. But I'm going to give my 1 to Njoku. I've just been a fan of his. I think they underutilize him, but every time they bother to use him, he shows up. And he did have a couple moments this game where they bothered to use him, and it was just like a little underneath passes, but he broke some tackles and immediately made plays because he's just electric.
Yeah.
And a mismatch that they should use more often, Kevin Stefanski. He's really good. Really talented. And I like that when he was given his few moments, even though they really weren't big moments, he tried to make the most of them. And so for that reason, on a thin day, I'm going to give it to Njoku.
All right, so let's move into the defense. The defense was actually happy, and we have 3 points to give out, and we have 2 points to give out, and we have 1 point to give out.
Ooh.
For me, we talked about a little bit about this pre-show, and we're in complete agreement about this for all 3 of them, so we're not going to go off too long for each of us. We're going to give you just some quick thoughts. At 3 Brownie Points, we both have Denzel Ward, he was incredible once again in man coverage, but not just that, he made some great tackles.
Forced the fumble.
Yeah, he had some great tackles. He was getting in there. He did everything that he was asked of at a really high level. And it's interesting because one of the criticisms of Denzel Ward coming out of college, from what I remember, was they worried about his tackling ability. In this game, it definitely did not show. He tackled well, and he covered like the Denzel Ward that we want and the Denzel Ward that we need, especially in this scheme that Jim Schwartz has been running. And at 2 Brownie Points, we had
Grant Delpit, a man who has really shown up the first 2 games and is showing some leadership. We're finally seeing that free safety we drafted in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
He made that nice interception, just read that route, picked it off. It was beautiful. He had a couple nice tackles himself. And he has shown a real ability here, had grown in this defense, grown into a leadership position in this defense. He's really coming onto his own. It's great to see. We've been waiting for a good free safety for a while.
Yeah.
And it's been a pleasure. It's been really nice to see. And he's
awesome.
Come up with a big tackle for a loss the last 2 weeks, each of the last 2 weeks. So I'm feeling good about him.
Yeah, he was getting in there at the line of scrimmage, playing really well there, and he played really well in coverage as well. That pick was not a lucky pick. Sometimes you get an interception, and the receiver's just sitting there, and the quarterback doesn't know what's going on. He just bombs it in there, and it goes right to you. Grant Delpit was guarding somebody else in that play. He had a different spot, and then he saw the route, turned quickly, jumped the route, grabbed that ball, picked it off. It was great awareness. That was interception. That was the virtue of Grant Delpit, not the detriment of Kenny Pickett. So that's
Even though Kenny Pickett has lots of detriment.
Exactly. Kenny Pickett's still awful. Don't get it twisted. But at one point, we also were in complete agreement about this one. And at one Brownie Point, we both had JOK, another player that we've been looking for to really pop, to show us what he's really made of. Not that he was not doing anything before, but it really felt like today was a really nice game from him. He was getting in the backfield, blowing up some plays. He looked lethal. He looked like a missile on some of those plays with that speed, power, and athleticism that he showed was what we drafted him for. That's what we got excited. And we got it. And that was awesome to see because he is really fun to watch when he's flying all around there.
And that was something I brought up about this year. I was most excited about him for this year because we finally got defensive tackles. He's the kind of linebacker that relies on his speed, needs defensive tackles who can hold the line so he'll shoot the gap. When you have weak defensive tackles, it throws off his entire game. He's not meant to deal with offensive linemen. He's not TJ Watt, right? And so now that we have proper defensive tackles, he's shooting gaps and making big plays just like we hoped he would. So just looking ahead real quick to the Titans coming up this week. Like we said, it's a big game for Deshaun. That secondary is all kinds of injured. Their offense has shown an ability in this past week to put up a few, but our defense is very good. It should be very much within range. He's got to must take advantage of this weak secondary and show us that he is worth at least $20 million a year. Forget about 45.
Yeah, complete agreement. We have to see progression from Deshaun Watson. He doesn't need to look like 2020 Deshaun Watson, whatever that year was. They had 4,800 yards.
Yeah.
Okay, it was 2020. All right. We need to see him take a step up. He needs to take a progression. He needs to stop looking like a backup and look like a bridge quarterback for me. And if he doesn't do that, for me, it's time for early onset panic. We'll get into that next week. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But that's what we're looking for. And I also want to see is, will Jim Schwartz adjust the offense if Ryan Tannehill starts burning us? Will they ease up a little bit on the pressure and get a little bit more people in coverage? Just see what he does. That's something I'm going to be looking forward to. What's your overall prediction for that game? We don't need to get into the score, but do you think the Browns pull off that win?
I think the Browns do win, but I get the feeling it's going to be like
an ugly game.
21 to 24 over 17.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be an explosion.
That's what I was thinking as well. I think the Browns are going to win it, but I think they're going to eke it out.
I do think it's a game victory that if they bothered, Njoku could really tear it up in, but I don't think they will.
Yeah. Hopefully next week we talk about how stupid we looked and we get to talk about how insane Deshaun Watson was and how he shredded the Titans defense. But for now, we got to wait. Thank you for listening.
We'll see you next week.